7 men's stories, exciting entertainment.
The legendary escape from Alcatraz. The myth of Alcatraz. Imagine being on an island surrounded by cold, crashing waters where everyone says no one has ever escaped alive. Alcatraz, known as the Rock, was once the most infamous maximum security prison in the world. It was meant to house the most dangerous criminals with no hope of escape or freedom. But the question that has fascinated historians, crime experts, and adventurers alike for decades remains: is it really possible to escape from Alcatraz? And if so, did anyone ever manage to do it? This story takes you inside the dark, damp cells of the world's most famous prison island, telling the desperate attempts of some of the most daring and ingenious prisoners to break free from the rocky fortress. It explores the mystery behind one of the most spectacular prison escapes in history. Buckle up, because this journey will take us deep into the night, where the sound of the ocean waves and the clinking of chains are the only things accompanying the breath of freedom. Chapter 1. The Fortress on the Rock. Alcatraz, a small, rugged island in San Francisco Bay, was first used as a military fort during the Civil War before being converted into a military prison in the early 20th century. In the year 1933, it became a federal penitentiary. The name Alcatraz soon became synonymous with hopelessness and despair. It was the end of the line for the incorrigible, murderers, mob bosses, and the most unruly criminals. The surveillance was strict, the cells were sparse, and the constant presence of armed guards and sharp spotlights made any hope of escape seem impossible. But it wasn't just the iron grip of the law that made Alcatraz so impregnable. The icy, shark-infested waters of San Francisco Bay served as a natural barrier. Currents strong enough to sweep a man away ensured that any attempt at escape into the water would be a race against death. Officially, no prisoner ever managed to leave Alcatraz alive except through a legitimate release. Yet history has taught us that where there is a will, there is a way. And so begins the legend of 3 men whose incredible escape still puzzles people today. Chapter 2. The Masterminds. Morris and the Anglin Brothers. Frank Morris, born in 1926, was not just a criminal. He was a brilliant mind. Morris was a gifted pianist and had an IQ of 133, placing him among the top 2% of the population. But instead of using his intelligence for good, Morris fell into a life of crime and became known for a series of burglaries and thefts. After several failed escape attempts from other prisons, Morris was eventually sent to Alcatraz, the one place authorities believed could hold him. However, Morris had other plans. He met 2 brothers, John and Clarence Anglin, who were also serving time for bank robbery. The Anglin brothers were also notorious escape artists, having begun their criminal careers at a young age. Together, Morris and the Anglin brothers devised a plan so bold and brilliant that it would bypass even the strictest security measures of Alcatraz. Chapter 3. The Plan. A year in the making. The plan to escape from Alcatraz began in 1962 and required extraordinary patience and ingenuity. Morris and the Anglin brothers worked on their plan for over a year, which unfolded in several stages. First, they needed access to the maintenance corridors behind their cells. These narrow tunnels led to an unused space above the cell block, which would serve as the perfect hiding spot. Using improvised tools, including a drill made from a stolen vacuum cleaner motor, they began to drill small holes in the back walls of their cells. These holes were just large enough for a man to squeeze through. To conceal their work, they crafted papier-mâché replicas that looked exactly like the cell walls to cover the holes. Gaining access to the maintenance corridors was only the first step. Morris and the Anglins also needed a way to cross the cold, unforgiving waters of the bay. This led to their next ingenious move. With the help of over 50 raincoats taken from other prisoners, they built an improvised raft and life vests. The seams of the raft were carefully sealed with vulcanized rubber, and air was pumped into it using an accordion-like musical instrument they had also stolen from the workshop. Chapter 4. The Night of the Escape. June 11th, 1962 would go down as one of the most famous nights in the history of Alcatraz. After carefully preparing their cells by placing the replicas over the holes, Morris and the Anglin brothers crawled through the openings and climbed to their hiding spot in the ceiling of the cell block. There they waited patiently until the lights went out and the nightly routine of the guards began. Morris and the Anglins moved quietly and methodically. They traversed the roof of the cell block, rappelled past the guard tower, and reached the shore. There they unfolded their raft and prepared for the most dangerous part of their escape, crossing the icy, treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay. Chapter 5. The Discovery. Prison Alarm. The next morning, the guards discovered the replicas in the cells. The alarm was sounded, and a massive manhunt began. Helicopters circled over the bay, boats patrolled the waters, and police searched the shorelines. But there was no trace of Morris and the Anglin brothers. A few personal items were found on the shore, including a paddle and part of the raft, but the men themselves remained missing. Officially, the escape was classified as failed, with authorities assuming that the men had drowned in the frigid waters. However, evidence that surfaced later would cast doubt on this conclusion. Chapter 6. Did they really make it? Since the escape from Alcatraz, numerous sightings and tips have been reported, suggesting that Morris and the Anglin brothers might have survived. The Anglin family claimed to have received Christmas cards from the brothers, and in 2013 a photograph emerged allegedly showing the Anglin brothers in Brazil, years after their escape. A letter purportedly written by John Anglin also surfaced, stating that all three men had survived and were living in the United States. The letter proposed a deal, medical treatment in exchange for a return to prison. However, the authenticity of the letter was never officially confirmed, and the identity of the sender remained unknown. The escape from Alcatraz remains one of the greatest mysteries in the history of crime. While the official version states that Morris and the Anglin brothers drowned in the bay, the possibility that they survived has continued to fuel the imagination of people. Their escape story has been immortalized in numerous films, books, and documentaries, making Alcatraz a symbol of ingenuity and the human will to survive, even in the most hopeless situations. Alcatraz closed its doors as a federal prison in 1963, less than a year after the famous escape. Today, it is a tourist attraction visited by millions of people each year, who come to experience the grim cells and the cold wind of the bay firsthand. But the biggest attraction remains the legend of Morris and the Anglin brothers, and the eternal question, did they really make it?
Feel free to follow this channel to avoid missing any new content. Disclaimer: the images are AI generated and are for illustration purposes. The stories on this channel are researched to the best of our knowledge.